Welcome to Relief Printmaking. My name is Professor Melissa Harshman, and I'm going to go over some of the tools we're going to need this semester for Relief Printmaking. One of the first things you're going to have to buy is some carving tools. The set that I prefer is a little more expensive, so you have to go by what your budget will allow. These are some carving tools that you buy from McLean's Printmaking out west, and I'll put links to all where you can get all these supplies. They sell, you can buy individual tools like this, and this is a U gouge, and you can kind of see the curve of the blade there, shaped like a U. They also sell V gouges, and these particular tools, so this is a V gouge, and you can see that the end, hopefully there, is shaped like a V. You can buy an introductory set. It comes with 4 individual tools like this, and I'll put a link for it up at the end of the video. Another set that I recommend is this set from Power Grip, it's called. And if you open it up, this is a set. It comes with 5 tools, and they're different types of, there's a U gouge, there's something that looks more like a chisel, a larger U gouge, and a larger V gouge. And all of these different tools just give you different marks in the linoleum or wood. This one is a little more affordable. I like both of these sets. For my own tools, I prefer the Japanese tools. I like both of these sets, these tools, because you can actually sharpen them again. And you'll need to sharpen the blades as we go throughout the semester. So another thing that I get at McLean's is a leather strap sharpening block. And you get this green compound that goes on it. And this helps you sharpen your tools. The other thing you're going to need to buy is our matrix that we're going to be using, which is linoleum. And linoleum can come kind of in this brown color, or usually what you'll see is a gray linoleum. Both of these have been carved. You can see I've already carved an image into this. And these are both gray. They're just a little bit stained from the ink that's been on them before. I prefer the unmounted linoleum. It's sort of thin. It has this burlap back. You can see. It's more portable, it's cheaper, and you can get bigger pieces of it and cut it down. The reason you would want a mounted linoleum block, which is linoleum that's mounted to a piece of wood about that thick, is because it's type high if you were doing it in letterpress. But for our needs, we'll use unmounted linoleum. We will also be using some wood throughout the semester, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. We can use some thin, kind of Luan plywood is usually what I buy. It's a cheaper wood, and it can splinter a little bit, but you just sort of deal with that. So mostly we'll be using linoleum and some wood in the class. The other thing you'll need is a roller, a soft speedball rubber brayer. They make them in hard rubber, but I prefer the soft rubber because I just feel like I can get the ink on there better. And I just thought I would show you, this is a new speedball roller. This is a 4-inch roller, which is probably what you would buy. This is a 3-inch roller, and you can see how different they look. This brayer I've had for probably over 25 years, but it still works perfectly well because I clean it really well. And you can see that the rubber has gotten stained over the years from the ink, but it works just as fine as a new one, but this is what yours would look like. Another tool that you'll need is a baron. Now I suggest this speedball baron because it's a little more heavyweight, has this nice handle, and it holds up a little bit better. A cheaper alternative is this bamboo disc baron that you can get. And the reason what these are is this is like the equivalent of your printing press. So what you're going to do, and we'll have ink, talk about ink later, some oil-based inks is what I use for relief. And so what you'll do is you would roll the ink on the surface of your block, right? And wherever you can see this image, wherever is carved out with your carving tools will not print because it's gone, and the ink only sticks to the surface. So what the baron does is when you put paper down, if this was your paper, let's see if I have a piece of paper here, a little bit smaller, but if you put your paper down, this you would rub on the back like this. It's not sticking because there's no ink, but it helps adhere the paper not only to the plate, but starts to print the paper. Now when I'm printing either by press or by hand. I usually use the Baron to get the paper to stick to the block. And then another tool that I like is a tool that you would use if you've taken etching. This is an etching burnisher, and you can see that the tip is a little bit curved. It's pointy, so you have to be careful. But once I'm printing, when I have ink down, I like to use the etching burnisher so I can localize and really press on the back of my print to get the ink to come onto the paper. Some people will use a wooden spoon like you would use in your kitchen, and that's fine. I just like the etching burnisher because I feel like I can really localize where my pressure is. So that's another tool that you might want to get. Gloves. These are disposable gloves. I usually try to just have kitchen gloves, more like these, so I can use them over and over again. These are really good for cleanup. Sometimes it's a little harder to manipulate things in big, heavy gloves, so you may want a few disposable pairs of gloves. I try to use these until they won't work anymore, so I get more than one use out of them. The other thing you'll need is some palette knives to mix ink. When you're mixing colors, it's nice to have several of these so you don't have to keep wiping it off when you're mixing color. To clean up really effectively, you'll need what I call a razor knife, which cleans the ink off of your palette. Pencils, stuff you have around. Some people like to draw over their image in Sharpie before they carve it, as well as various paint brushes. When we start using wood, when you carve into, even in linoleum, you can kind of see there's a different color here from where it's been carved for versus the top of it. When you carve into wood, you don't really get that color change. So often I will stain my wood with either India ink diluted, and I brush it on and let it dry, or you can use watercolor. So you might need some brushes to do that. So I don't specify which brush, you'll probably only need one to do that. You'll also need a bag of rags that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot for cleanup. And if you have old magazines or phone books sitting around, I keep these whenever they come in because when I'm cleaning up, I wipe my ink on this so I can just throw it away. The other thing that's nice to have around is some Scotch tape, like the big packing tape, because if you mix up too much ink, I will show you how to fold the ink up in the tape to save it for your next printing session. The other thing I will talk about is paper. This is a little piece of a Taikozo paper. As well, the papers I recommend are Taikozo, or Kitakata is a good printing paper. These are Japanese papers that are made with fibers, and you can see they're a little bit, you can almost see my hand through it. They're a little more transparent, and they're very easy to hand print when you're doing a linoleum or woodcut. Also, traditionally, they've been used because of this translucence and the lightweightness. They're just very well suited to relief printmaking. You can also use a rag paper like BFK, something like that. It's a little harder if you're going to hand print something because the paper may want to shift on the block, where it's easier to print with a really thin Japanese paper and not have it shift. I'll talk more about ink a little bit later, but this is a bone black etching ink, and I tend to use etching ink that is oil-based for my printing, just because I like the way it works and I manipulate it to make sure it's the right viscosity. I prefer them to water-based inks, and it's just a personal preference. I like the way they look. They don't dry as fast on the block, so it gives you a little more time to work. And because we're using oil-based inks, I clean up everything. This is just a little container that I have of vegetable oil, just like you would use in your kitchen. And I clean the block off with this. I clean the ink slab that we work on, and I also clean my rollers with it. So you'll use the rags for that. So all of my materials right here are on glass slab tables. I just have a cutting mat on here right now, but this is all glass slab tables. So if you don't have a glass slab table, what I would do is I buy either a bigger piece of plexiglass. I prefer that over glass that's not been sanded down so you don't cut yourself, but you could have a piece of glass where I would tape off the edges then, like you would for a painting palette. or a piece of plexi, even a small one will work. This is a small piece of plexi that you would have separately where you could ink, mix your colors on and roll your ink out on to roll up on your block. The other thing we'll need is newsprint for covering for print when we're printing. So just getting a newsprint pad. And I also use newsprint to make templates, printing templates. So this tells me this is where my block would go and this is where my paper would go. And that way I don't waste as much paper trying to eyeball it. And another thing that helps when you make a template is to have a piece of mylar or acetate. It's just a plastic film that I put over this when I'm printing, and I put my block down, because then if I accidentally get ink out here on the template, I have this piece of plastic over it. I can just wipe it off and reuse it. If you don't have the mylar over your template when you're starting to print, it's not a big deal, but if you get ink on the template, then you just have to make a new one. And this way, I can use the same template over and over again if I'm using the same size block. So you need, again, to review, you need your carving tools, what we're going to carve on, linoleum, or we'll get some wood. You need palette knives, scraper knives, a Baron. I suggest the Speedball Baron here, and ink and paper. And that's pretty much, except there might be a few other incidentals I haven't thought of, a ruler to tear your paper to size. But that's pretty much the supplies we're going to use this semester. So if you have questions, you can always email me, and I'm going to put a link at the end of the video of where you can get some of these supplies. All right. So this is the set from McLean's. It's a 4-piece set that you can order online. And then this is the leather honing block they also sell to sharpen your tools. And the next image is the sharpening compound that you would use on your block. And I'll put the website up where you can order all of these. These next set of tools you can buy at Dick Blick. I recommend this Speedball Baron. It's a little better quality and will last longer. We'll be buying some various sizes of linoleum, but I suggest this 9x12 pack to get started with. I do suggest the 4-inch Speedball soft rubber brayer. I think these work the best. And then if you want to have some help hand printing, the Etching Burnisher will help give you some localized pressure. And here are listed the websites where you can find all of these different tools online. I've also included the website, which is Amazon, if you would prefer to get the power grip tools.